It's here. The heavily anticipated virtual reality football game to hold the official NFL licensing is finally upon us. After its unveiling in April of this year, no information came out about it until around a month ago, when they casually said, "Oh hey, by the way, this game's dropping in a couple weeks." I was shocked. Sure, they said it'd release in fall 2022, but I wasn't expecting it to be this early. It technically wasn't even fall yet, and that early launch date means I'll get to play it throughout the entire NFL season, which is sick. An early release date usually implies a bit of a rushed development, but it doesn't feel like that's the case for this game. This is actually a really freaking good experience. But is it the quote-unquote Madden VR game we've been waiting for? In a lot of ways, yes, it absolutely is. But in some equally important ways, it falls quite a bit short. Before we get too deep into things though, full disclaimer, my copy of the game was sent to me by Status Pro for reviewing purposes. But as always, I speak the truth here regardless of what that company would prefer I say. That said, let's start with what is probably the most positive aspect of the entire game, the overall presentation. Most games on the Quest 2 go for a more cartoony art style, to better mask the weaker hardware, but this game does its best to look like real life, and they did a damn good job. The shadows and lighting effects look the part, the textures have a ton of detail, and the players look like real human beings. Up close they're not great, and you can immediately tell they reused the same couple face textures, instead of making unique ones for each player, but that's a massive undertaking and this definitely does the job. I have to give them a lot of credit though, because these rosters are dead on. I don't know if they'll keep them up to date or not, only time will tell, but still. Getting to play with these iconic star players in VR is insanely cool. I don't think each player has personalized stats though. They might be a little different, but it's not like Tyreek's noticeably faster or Diggs is breaking everyone's ankles. So while you see the correct names, they aren't really the guys you've come to know. That's such a large part of Madden. You get to take advantage of each player's unique traits to make the magic happen yourself. And this game not having that same thing takes away a huge part of what makes that series special. So no, I can't really call it VR Madden. It's an NFL licensed VR football game completely separate of it. It's sort of a letdown, but it does make matchups a lot more even and gives even the worst of teams a shot at winning. So yes, you Jets fans can be on even playing ground for once. And I have to give huge props to whoever's in charge of the animations over at Status Pro. All the movements look very believable. Every step, tackle, jump, and catch looks exactly like it does in real life. Okay, maybe not that good, but I'd say it's just about on par with Madden. The founders of the studio were NFL players themselves back in the day, so they know what it should look like. And they've taken those experiences and their love for the game of football to make what is truly the most immersive virtual reality experience of it out there. And to top it all off, they recreated every stadium near perfectly. When I first loaded into the Bills Stadium, I was in awe of how accurate it was in pretty much every regard. I've been there a few times, and felt right at home when I played there virtually. That's the only one I've physically been to though, so getting to visit every single one of them has been an absolute joy, especially considering how precise and distinct they all are. Even the crowds have a good amount of detail. They at least made an effort to give fans faces and scatter some different colored jerseys around, which really adds to the overall spectacle. Now, I could praise the visuals all day long. It looks like an NFL VR game should, and I'm all for it. But you get the point. You're seeing the same footage I'm playing, so let's move on to the actual substance of the game. There is a lot of content here, and the main attraction is the season mode. You can pick any team in the league and play through their entire schedule, which is something people have been wanting from a VR football game forever now, and it finally being possible is a big deal. 2MD doesn't have a season mode at all, and while the Patrick Mahomes experience has one, it's not the actual NFL teams or schedules, just color schemes that vaguely resemble real teams. Pro Era having that NFL license immediately gives it such a big advantage when compared to the alternatives, since that brand has so much trust and credibility attached to it. Regardless of the quality of the game, people will buy it because it has those iconic teams and that reliable brand connected to it. No other VR game can offer such a thing, so if you're looking to play quarterback for your favorite NFL team, this is your only option right now. Not saying that's a good or bad thing, just saying no other game on the market can do that. That's really the biggest selling point, and you probably got that going into this, so let's move on and cover some of the other stuff you can do. The central starting area is, of course, the locker room, and from here you can access everything. If you pick up the helmet, you start your next season game. If you grab the football, you go to the practice field and can test out some plays. And if you grab the cleats, you can customize your character. It's cool that you can personalize the guy you're playing as, but you're not gonna see him, so what's the point? You can also pick up the water bottle to mess with the settings, including the quarter length, so no matter how much time you have for around a gridiron, you can get your fix, don't worry. Next to that cubby, there's a whiteboard that breaks down your next season matchup and tries to give you tips to be more successful. Nice. Turning around reveals a doorway that leads to your trophy room, which gradually fills as you beat different teams and get all the achievements. But next to that entrance, there's this tablet thingy that has a couple really nice features. The most important of which, exhibition matches. So yes, you can pick any two teams you want and battle it out, which is sweet. With that, there's a challenge mode, which tries to help you improve in different aspects of your game, and it actually adds quite a bit to do. There's also a 2-minute drill, which is only there so 2MD can't say they have that up on them. But most interesting of all, there's a multiplayer mode, but it's not exactly what I meant when I said I wanted multiplayer. Instead of letting you and a buddy duel it out as the quarterback of opposing teams, you go to a training field and join a voice chat together. That's it. Granted, it lets you play catch and some small minigames together, but it's nothing special. It's a step in the right direction for sure, but I really want to see online play taken further in VR football. Pretty much every VR basketball game has online multiplayer, and it usually works pretty well, so I don't see the holdup with football. Sure, both players wouldn't be on the field at the same time, but wouldn't that be easier on the hardware and internet connection? I don't know, just doesn't make sense to me. That aside, there's a large variety of different modes here, and it has an option for pretty much everything I could want in a game like this. It's great, but meaningless if the gameplay itself isn't quality. For simulating the quarterback experience, the most important thing to get right is the throwing mechanics, and with this game being made by former players, you'd think it'd have the most accurate physics out there, but that's actually not the case. As with every VR football game, you use the grip or the trigger to hold the ball, then do a throwing motion with your arm and release the button when you release the ball. Pretty standard, but each one I've played interprets that motion as something entirely different. By default, this game comes equipped with aim assist, so when you try to hit a receiver, the game will try its best to detect who you're aiming for and steer the ball to hit them on the money. Seems like a good and useful feature, except for the fact that it doesn't work very well. When you take the snap, it highlights the player you're most facing as you move through your progressions, and when you release the ball, it pulls to that player's general region. Sounds like a decent way of doing it, but that marker is anything but consistent, and if you can't get it to focus on the right guy, the throw's gonna be way off. When receivers are all bunched together, or there's one in front of another, there's no way to guarantee it locks onto the right dude. You can try and turn your head toward your target receiver a bit more and cross your fingers that it'll lock on, but even if it does, it costs you valuable time and will lead to you taking way more sacks. So not only do you have to focus on making a good throw, but you also have to make sure it's focused on the right guy, which fundamentally changes the way you play the game, and it's not for the better. I really don't like it. It makes gameplay less about your own skill and more about a program doing its job right. But the worst part is, even if you turn the assist off, it doesn't get much better. It just doesn't track your arm movement as well as you'd want. It struggles to properly identify how much power you give a throw, and where you are aiming is rarely reflected in-game. And it's flat out inconsistent, which makes it near impossible to get a hang of. It really helps that the receivers do a decent job of tracking the ball down and making good catches, but in the end, it feels less like I'm making the play. And that's the key aspect that 2MD excels in. The throwing physics are more accurate than they are in any other game I've played. And while it doesn't feel like you're throwing a real football, it's easy to adjust to, and once you do, you can sling that thing on a line. NFL Pro Era has so much more to offer, but at its core, the gameplay of 2MD is more fun. That's my personal opinion, it's very much up for debate, and as I play this game more, maybe my thoughts will change. As it is now though, there's still quite a few things relating to gameplay that this game does a lot better, the most notable of which being play calling. There's a massive arsenal of plays at your disposal. In the training mode, you can go through all of them and test them out as you please, and in games, you're suggested a new one every down, then can scroll through a wheel of similar plays on your wrist and audible to one you're more comfortable with. I love that there's so many to choose from, and that it forces you to switch them up each down. It keeps the game way more fresh. And there's even different play types. There's drop back snaps where you have to hold your hands down toward the center, shotgun passes where you're backed way up, and even running plays that actually work. You just release the ball in the running back's lap, and while they rarely go for any positive yards, it works as intended, and that's way more than I can say for something like the Pat Mahomes experience. And you're also able to run the ball as the quarterback, without having to physically move yourself, which really opens up the potential for big plays, and I'm all for that. The only thing that actively bothers me while I'm playing full games is the amount of time you have to spend on the sidelines. I get that it's more accurate to an actual quarterback's experience, but I don't want to just stand there and wait to play again. There is an option to sim through defensive drives, but you still have to watch all the kicks, and it takes upwards of a minute, which doesn't sound like long, but trust me, it feels like it. Performance-wise, despite loading these high-end graphics, the game actually runs quite well on the Oculus Quest 2. There's occasional lag, and your inputs seem to have a slight delay, but it's hardly noticeable. So yeah, overall, this game is really solid. There's a couple things I hope they improve in the near future, but as of right now, it's a damn good VR football game. If they tweak the throwing mechanics to be more precise and trim the fat when simming through games, this would undeniably be the best option out there. That $30 price tag makes it the priciest option, but you're paying for that NFL license, and I think that makes it worth the steeper rate. For half that price though, you can snag 2MD VR Football, which has more fun gameplay and playable wide receivers, which is awesome. If you're strictly an NFL fan, you already know the answer, go get Pro Era. You knew you wanted it this whole time. But if you're looking for a more arcade-like and straight-up entertaining football experience, I'd say go get 2MD. And yes, the Patrick Mahomes experience is right in the middle in price, but it's the worst of both worlds, so don't even consider grabbing it. But I want to know what you think. If you've been playing NFL Pro Era, how do you like it? And would you say it's better or worse than 2MD? Let me know in the comments down below. If you're unfamiliar with those other VR football games, click that playlist and check out my thoughts on them. And if you want to watch something a bit different, watch my video about the ultimate VR basketball game. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you later.